More on the Fani Willis ruling, our all-star legal team who has gotten us through this from the start. Phil Holloway, legal analyst and town hall contributor. Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. And Mike Davis, founder of the Article 3 Project. So here we are, guys. A couple months after I was told by the New York Times, The Daily, that nobody really saw anything to this motion when it was first filed. We all just thought it was a joke. Not true, New York Times. Some of us saw a major potential problem here. And today, that's been proven correct. In fact, we've got that soundbite if you'd like to hear it. Listen.
If I'm remembering correctly, the feeling that a lot of people had when this motion was filed was that it was kind of a Hail Mary, right? And there was not much evidence that it was necessarily even true.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a Hail Mary in the sense that Michael Roman's lawyer didn't include any evidence to back up her claim, this very salacious claim. So there was a moment there when nobody knew really what to make of it. It was a very uncomfortable moment.
Really? Actually, no, because we were talking about this right from the get-go. Dave and Mike, you were on our show, and we talked about these explosive allegations and where they could lead. And ultimately today, we see that at least half of the prosecution team could be leaving this case. I mean, will be leaving this case. Nathan Wade's going, or Fani Willis and her entire office is going. So it is a huge deal. And it was obvious to any nonpartisan hack from the beginning that this is seriously problematic if true. And it wound up being 100% true. I mean, that's the thing. Phil, I'll start with you on it because the allegations against Fani and Nathan were either admitted to by this pair or denied in part, and this judge, while saying maybe they weren't proven, that the affair began before 2022, I smell a rat, there's the odor of mendacity, somebody else should really investigate. I mean, everything the defense suggested, I think, was accepted by this judge. The only question was, what are the consequences going to be? What do you make of the ruling, though?
Well, to me, Megyn, it's kind of a mixed bag. The order itself was, in fact, scathing in its description of the overall, sort of bad judgment used, to put it lightly, by the district attorney and others in this case. I don't think, though, that this is really a big win per se for the defense, because cutting Nathan Wade out of the case, and look, that's what's going to happen. That's really not going to be that big of a deal. It's not going to slow them down. They won't miss a beat. Nathan Wade, despite what they may have said, is not carrying the water for this prosecution team. It's Anna Cross and some of the others that are really doing, I think, the heavy lifting here. Wade was sort of involved in the periphery, but as far as doing the heavy lifting in court, it wasn't him. So she's got to decide, is she going to go and take her whole office with her? She can't leave Wade, by the way, because if she goes, he's got to go because his authority comes from her. So she's not going to get out of the case. She's not going anywhere. I think tossing Wade out is throwing a bone to the defense. It ignores the what I believe was perjury. It avoids what I believe was the fraud perpetrated on the court. He basically said Robin Yurdy didn't move the needle. Well, that can't possibly be true. She's got personal knowledge. She saw the affair taking place in 2019. He just seemed to ignore that. He ignored Terrence Bradley's text messages where Terrence Bradley confirmed that the affair started before they testified it did in 2022. And strikingly to me, he doesn't want to even hear from Cindy Yeager, who is the chief assistant DA in Cobb County, who has personal knowledge that Fani Willis was influencing and tampering with witnesses back as early as September of 2023. So, if I'm the judge, I'm going to want to get to the bottom of this. He, on the other hand, wants to just ignore it all, split the baby in half and move forward. He took the easy way out. But look, Megyn, I want to share something with you. I don't think it's going to be over. I think these defendants are going to continue to pursue things. And there is a Georgia law, and I'm going to read the necessary parts to you. It's Georgia Code 151827. It says that when any person makes an affidavit before a judge of the Superior Court, which alleges that the district attorney or a member of the staff of the district attorney has committed an indictable offense, and the court finds there's probable cause to believe of such, the judge, it says, has a duty, an affirmative duty to notify the attorney general and refer it to the attorney general. So I wonder if we're going to see an appeal. I think the parties absolutely can appeal this. They're going to, I think, ask for what's called an affidavit or a certificate of immediate review, which is a discretionary thing, but it would allow them to do a pretrial appeal. I suspect the judge would grant it. I think Willis, by the way, is also going to be appealing the ruling that tossed 6 of the counts out the other day against Trump and some others. So there's going to be some things, I think, going up on appeal anyway. And I really think I think it's a pretty good bet. We're going to see some people asking the judge to refer this case to the attorney general for prosecuting what I think are the indictable offenses. You got perjury, you got influencing the witness, you got violation of oath of office. In my opinion, there's probable cause to believe those people have committed all those, and those are all indictable offenses. So yeah, this is not over.
Violation of oath of office is those are the 6 counts that got dismissed against Trump and his co-defendants just the other day by this judge. Now it could be brought against her. She's also accusing them of lying. Now that charge could be brought against her. And you're telling me that there's a Georgia statute that says it can happen if only there is an affidavit that the DA or her staff has committed an indictable offense and the judge sees probable cause that it's true, then he has an affirmative duty to refer it to the attorney general. So that'll be the question. Does the judge, I'm sure they'll produce the affidavit, does the judge see probable cause that Fani Willis or a member of her staff has committed an indictable offense? Either she or Nathan Wade, who would be, I think for these purposes, considered part of her staff, even though he's an independent contractor, he's there because of her. All right, let me zoom back out and get overall reactions to the decision. Mike Davis, start with you.
Well, I'm not surprised if this judge, after these overwhelming facts, and if he actually followed the law, he clearly should have disqualified Fulton County DA Fani Willis in her office. But I think he caved to the politics. He faces a Democrat challenger in November, and I think he tried to split the baby here. And that's when he dismissed those 6 charges before this ruling. When he did a couple radio interviews before this ruling, and just seeing his demeanor and that evidentiary hearing, I have always feared that he would not follow the facts and the law here and follow the politics. And I think that's exactly what he's done.
Dave, what do you make of it?
Megyn, you remember when Mike Davis got the Supreme Court decision right on absolute immunity and I was wrong? Well, in this one, I want to take a bit of a victory lap because I called it at least part of the way.
Do we have that? Did we cut that, you guys? I thought we may have cut a soundbite. Oh, here. Oh, actually here. We did all of you just because we like to keep the record. Stand by. This is how the predictions went. What's the percentage odds, Phil, that it happens, that she and Nathan Wade and her office get booted?
I'm probably at around 80 to 85%, I would say. I think the odds are pretty good. I do think the judge is going to do it.
If this judge does his job and follows the law, it should be 100%.
I think Nathan Wade, 80% he gets bounced, 85%, 90% he gets bounced. But as far as Fani Willis, I think 50-50. And you may be wondering, how does one get bounced but not the other? I think the judge could split that hair and actually say that for the appearances of impropriety, for all these reasons, he should not be part of the case. Fani Willis, you need to remove him from the case. But because I have not established that there has been an actual conflict involving you, I'm going to allow you to remain on the case. But Nathan Wade has to go.
Dave Ehrenberg nailed it. Wow. I mean, in detail, nailed it. Yes, champion. You're right. You did. Well done.
Thank you. That makes up for my my wrong predictions everywhere else. So thank you, Megyn. This is my issue, is that I thought this would be the outcome, but I didn't know how the judge would get there, because it is a bit of a confusing ruling when the judge says, well, I don't believe Nathan Wade. I don't really even believe Robin Yurdy. I don't believe Terrence Bradley. I'm not going to say anything about Fani Willis. How can you say that Nathan Wade is not credible, but Fani Willis doesn't get tarred with that? Remember, she adopted the affidavit. That's to Phil's point. So I think that the judge was able to get to the conclusion that he wanted to, that I wanted him to get to, but the reasoning is really tortured. And because of that, I think there is grounds for appeal. I still appreciate that this is a very difficult case, and I think the end result is something that I agree with, but I admit that this could be ripe for some sort of appeal, or at least what Phil said about going to the Attorney General, because this is not over.
Oh, fascinating. Very, very good analysis there, Dave. And now we have 5 lawyers saying they think this actually has a decent chance of getting overturned on appeal in Trump's favor, because the judge does not look like he applied the right legal standard. I mean, it was really just kind of tortured to get to. No actual conflict, but on the appearance of impropriety, yes, but it can be cured, but only one of the bank robbers has to go, to use Jonathan Turley's analysis. Just one of you caught in the vault is off the case. The other, as long as you don't continue stealing, it's fine. No consequences for the past stealing. Couple points on what you said, Phil. Anna Cross is with Kate Middleton, as far as we know. We have not seen Anna Cross, okay? She's the other special ADA brought in. And since Terrence Bradley got up there and spewed his lies, she's disappeared. We don't know where she is. So we'll see whether she's still a special prosecutor on this case, which leaves the other guy, Floyd, who really is a RICO specialist and also maintains his private practice. So I don't know that he wants to go into the lead position on this case. I think they're stuck with Fani, which, is not all bad news for Trump. Robin Yurti, I want to talk about her, you guys. So he gets to Robin Yurti and he says, I'm going to pull it up. He says something that we all discussed on this show the day it happened, that he didn't really believe her, that he said there wasn't enough there. I'm trying to find it here in all my notes, that she testified, yes, that the affair began before they admitted it. Here it is. While the testimony of Robin Yurti raised doubts about the state's assertions, it ultimately lacked context and detail. Okay, actually, this one's for Mike. Mike, even you and I, who believed strongly that Yurti was telling the truth, wanted more detail from Robin Yurti, because it was one thing to have her say, they had an affair, Fani told me, and I saw it, period, move on. And it would have been another entirely for her to say, this is exactly what Fani said to me. This is exactly what I saw. I saw them in bed together when I came to visit my condo. Or and I don't know why to this moment that wasn't provided, but it was what the judge ultimately used to dismiss the critical witness in the case.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if the judge followed the facts and followed the law, this would have been a very easy case. But I think this judge has a big political problem this November with a Democrat challenger for this judgeship in an overwhelmingly Democrat district. So I think he did legal gymnastics in this order to protect Fani Willis in this case.
He did legal and some factual gymnastics, Phil, because to dismiss Robin Yurti like that, well, it lacked context. Well, okay, but it's under oath testimony that is unchallenged, other than the fact that she got bounced out of the office. And Terrence Bradley, he completely dismissed his texts to Ashley Merchant, saying, I didn't see anywhere a foundation that he had personal knowledge on any of it. And he dismissed the cell phone evidence. I don't know why. That wasn't really explained, why him going for overnights at Fani's house before they claimed their relationship began was not persuasive to this judge.
Oh, I can explain it. The explanation is that the judge is keenly aware that Willis has a very powerful political apparatus that she can weaponize against him at the drop of a hat. And if he goes as far as tossing her and saying that she's lied in court, then that political apparatus immediately starts supporting the very far left opponent of Scott McAfee and boosts him and probably gets him to replace McAfee after the election in May. So that's, I think, the actual explanation. But purely legally, I don't know how you can dismiss the testimony of Yurti by simply saying, well, it lacked context. Well, what more context do you want? I mean, she was under oath. She said she saw them hugging and kissing, and she was at her apartment, for crying out loud. I mean, I guess we could have asked, or the lawyers could have asked more questions that were maybe to satisfy somebody's prurient interest about whether or not they were actually in bed together having sex and things like that. But it's just not necessary to go that far to make the point. And like you said, it was unchallenged. I can understand why he didn't put a whole lot of weight to what Terrence Bradley said in court, but Terrence Bradley's text messages I thought were very compelling. The thing about the cell phone records, Megyn, I agree with you. He ignored that, but he never actually allowed them to have an evidentiary hearing to present all that stuff. So I think that it was a mistake to rule against these defendants without hearing all of their proposed testimony. I think it's a mistake for him to make this ruling without hearing from prosecutor Cindy Yeager, who has personal knowledge that Fani witness was going so far as tampering with witnesses. This is the kind of misconduct that clearly requires, it's not even optional at this point. If you got the DA interfering with the tampering with a witness, not only is it's a crime, but it's the kind of thing you got to get her off the case immediately, because it's just fundamentally unfair to all of the defendants to have their prosecutor engaging in this kind of extreme, in my opinion, misconduct. Designed to get a
misconduct
and
dishonesty. And Nathan Wade's dishonesty. The fact that the judge would even leave it as an option for him to stay on this case is an outrage. Nathan Wade, without question, lied repeatedly under oath, without question. And the most we get from the judge about that is a passing reference to, quote, Wade's patently unpersuasive explanation for the inaccurate interrogatories he submitted in his pending divorce. Inaccurate? Oh my God. Interrogatories he submitted in his pending divorce indicates a willingness on his part to wrongly conceal his relationship with the district attorney. What you mean is he lied under oath. He perjured himself in his divorce proceeding, and you admit it makes it more likely that he may have lied to you. And then he goes on to, this is the most we hear about the cell phone tower evidence showing Nathan Wade and the teenage text messages levels we haven't seen since we were all, immersed in acne and testosterone. That he dismisses all of that, and the overnight stays with the following line. Even after considering the proffered cell phone testimony from Donald Trump, that's what I'm referring to, along with the entirety of other evidence, neither side was able to conclusively establish by a preponderance of the evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. Dave Ehrenberg, that's just not true. That no reasonable person could say that there was not a preponderance of the evidence given Yurti, given the cell phone evidence, and yes, I think Terrence Bradley too, that this thing didn't begin prior to when they alleged.
Megyn, I do think the judge could have just said about Yurti that I don't find her credible because she has a reason to lie, but that's not what he said. He said, what did he say? The facts and circumstances, the context.
He said she raised doubts about their assertions, but her testimony ultimately lacked context and detail. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave. Hold that thought, because I'm just going to play you her soundbite, because she did provide some detail. Listen.
From everything that you saw, heard, witnessed, it's your understanding that they were in a romantic relationship beginning in 2019.
Yes.
You have no doubt that their romantic relationship was in effect from 2019 until the last time you spoke with her?
No doubt.
And did you observe them do things that are common among people having a romantic relationship?
Yes.
Such as, can you give us an example?
Hugging, kissing, just affection.
All before November 1st of 2021, correct?
Yes.
Dave?
Yeah, so I think what the judge did here is to say the standard is actual conflict. And if you show lying, I am not going to recuse you for that. That's going to be something the bar has to deal with and the authorities. We're just going to stick to actual conflict, even though he didn't really say that, because after all, he got rid of Nathan Wade because of lying. So that's why it's a convoluted decision. And maybe this is a question for Phil, but when it comes to the appeal, although I'm not convinced it's going to get overturned on appeal, I wonder, does the defense even have a right to an immediate appeal under Georgia law, or do they have to wait till the case is over? Because that's where it is in other states where you can't take what's called an interlocutory appeal. If you're a defendant, you got to wait till after the case has been decided.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, if you want to answer that, yeah, sure. It's in Georgia. It's just some things are directly appealable. I think this one is not. I think they have to file an application for it's called a certificate of immediate review, and then if the judge grants that, it is discretionary. The Court of Appeals also has to decide in a discretionary fashion if they're going to take it. However, the statement that was read at the beginning of this segment from, Attorney Ashley Merchant saying she's going to have to wait and see, what's Willis going to do about that other ruling. If Willis appeals that other ruling, she doesn't have to ask for permission. That's a directly appealable order.
The judge already gave it. When the judge yesterday in dismissing those, or the other day, those 6 counts of the indictment against Trump et al., gave it in the opinion saying, if you want to take this up immediately, you can. He did not include that line in this ruling.
That's right.
But Ashley's waiting to see if Willis does take it up on appeal, and I think she probably will, then I think the judge really should say, okay, let's just send all of it up then. If part of it's going, it makes sense for them to rule on all of this. I know for a fact that the lawyers are going to be filing the applications for the certificate of immediate review in the coming days. What the judge does with it, I don't know, but I do think it's likely that he will allow it to be done. It's a very important case, but you're correct. It's not something that we have an automatic right to do pre-trial. And if the judge denies it, then you got to wait until a conviction happens if that does happen. And then that becomes part of everything else that you appeal following a conviction.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I think that Fani Willis probably is less likely to appeal the dismissal of those 6 counts, in part because of what Phil said, that it opens the door for the defense to appeal this. Also, I don't think Fani Willis wants to delay this any further. This is not going to trial before the election. If she goes on appeal to appeal the dismissal of those 6 counts, this will delay everything so long. I think she just moves on, and that's what she should do. And one more thing. The part I do agree with the court on is when it comes to the actual conflict of interest. If she had a relationship with the judge, a witness, the defense, then it's clear there's an actual conflict of interest. But I've never been convinced that having a relationship with the person who works with you is an actual conflict. Where I had an issue is the potential for lying. And the judge seemed to say, well, that's not going to be a consideration here to get rid of the prosecutor. It's going to be about whether there's an actual conflict of interest.
Well, he said he did find that he didn't see any evidence that Fani Willis was trying to delay the trial of Trump at all in order to run up Nathan Wade's bill. Like he said, if anything, she's been putting pedal to the metal, and it's been Team Trump that's been trying to delay. So if she has some interest in extending Nathan Wade's contract and reaping more benefits from his salary, I haven't seen evidence of that because she wants this case resolved sooner rather than later. But Mike, we haven't even talked about one of the most extraordinary pieces of the decision, which is this judge is trying to get us to believe that he bought the cash lie, that he accepted her nonsense about reimbursing him half of all the expenses in cash. I mean, my God.
That's the part that is just so unbelievably laughable. That's the actual conflict of interest. If you are a prosecutor and you have a financial stake in that criminal prosecution that is absolutely illegal, that has an absolute conflict of interest, you don't have to prove prejudice to the defendant. You just get booted from the case and many other things. And so what Fani Willis is alleging, or what Fani Willis is saying is that, no, I didn't take illegal kickbacks from my unqualified secret boyfriend when I paid him $250 an hour to bring a RICO case against Trump and 18 others, something way above his pay grade. I didn't take an illegal kickback. These lavish trips that he took me on, I paid him back in cash. And the judge actually believed her Black Panther father story, that her Black Panther father told her to keep 6 months of cash laying around the house like a prostitute or a drug dealer because you may need it someday. But she never explained how she reimbursed that cash so she can have her 6 month stash in her house as she's spending thousands of dollars reimbursing her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, for these trips. It's just complete. The legal term is bullshit. It's just complete bullshit. And the judge bought this.
Yeah, he said, simply put, the defendants have not presented sufficient evidence indicating that the expenses were not roughly divided evenly. That's a quote from Nathan Wade's affidavit. or that the DA was or currently remains, quote, greatly and pecuniarily interested in this prosecution. And he went back to say, he based that conclusion on the following: the cash reimbursement practice she testified to may be unusual, and the lack of any documentary corroboration understandably concerning, yet the testimony withstood direct contradiction. What does that mean? Was corroborated by other evidence, for example, her payment of airfare for two on the 2022 Miami trip, and was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. So notice like the complete pass he gives them on the nonsense around the cash, but on the Robin Yurti testimonial, the Terrence Bradley texts, the cell phone tower data, you can't say conclusively past preponderance of the evidence. And there you see the judge really putting his thumb on the scale to make sure Fani Willis stays on this case and doesn't get disqualified. It's obvious.
I guess he went to the same word salad school that Kamala Harris went to, because that's just gobbledygook. I have no idea what that even means. He wanted to come to a certain conclusion here. He wanted to make sure that he was scathing enough that some people who might see it sort of the way we seem to see it are kind of satisfied, but he didn't want to go so far as to force Fani Willis to turn her political apparatus against him in this election. It's just defies, rationality to believe the cash reimbursement business and to even consider Nathan Wade's affidavit, which is not evidence in the case. It's not subject to cross-examination. He already said he didn't really believe Nathan Wade's testimony, from the actual witness stand. So how can he buy into this whole thing that it was roughly equally shared
divided and
reimbursed? That just makes absolutely no legal or rational sense to me. This whole ruling stinks. This is a terrible ruling. This is the kind of thing that further, in my opinion, adds to the unfortunate embarrassment of the legal community in Atlanta, where I practice. And I hate to see it. If he's going to deny the motion, do it in a way that makes sense. Don't say these kind of things like, well, the cash may be unusual, but it's okay. I'm going to go with it. And oh, by the way, Robin Yurti, even though she said that they had an affair in 2019, that lacks context. So we're going to ignore that. Don't explain your ruling in ways that are just irrational and stupid. Go ahead and give us something
it's James Comey-esque. It reminded me of James Comey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like she did it, all of it. She's terrible. Trust me, she did all the nefarious things you think she did with the emails. But I'm not going to indict. But no. Right? And you're left with, well, wait a minute. 90% of what you said leads to criminal conclusions, and yet you decided to jump off a different way at the end. And also, when I read it this morning, I couldn't help but think of John Roberts and Obamacare. When we all thought, when he found that there was no interstate commerce that would have justified the interference of Congress in this, the injection of Congress in regulating healthcare, they said, you know what, you're right, there is no interstate commerce that would have allowed this. And everybody said, oh my God, he's overturning it. He's pulling the individual mandate that the high court is. And John Roberts said, but it could be justified under the tax clause. He pulled a John Roberts.
Yeah, not only is there overwhelming evidence that she perjured herself in court, did this judge even address the fact that her office with 10 attorneys on this pleading submitted that knowingly false affidavit from Nathan Wade's divorce proceedings? They submitted that affidavit in response to co-defendant Mike Roman's motion to dismiss in front of Judge McAfee. Was that even addressed in here, that 10 attorneys submitted that 2 attorneys, Nathan Wade and Fani Willis, had 8 other attorneys in the Fulton County DA's office submit a false affidavit? I mean, it's just shocking to me that this judge went out of his way to protect Fani Willis here, other than the fact that he's running for re-election.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, I know you're going to jump, but before I let you go, what do you make of this? Because Phil and I have a little disagreement on whether this is a good ruling for Trump, whether this wound up being sort of a relatively good day for Team Trump in the Atlanta case or not. I agree he didn't get what he wanted. Phil's right about that, and he should have, the defense team, Team Trump. But I still see this, and I use the term huge. I see it as a huge win for Team Trump, because 3 months ago, It was full steam ahead against Trump and all the co-defendants. Now, here we are 3 months later, you've gotten one of the chief prosecutors booted, and you've disgraced the Fulton County district attorney in a way that we did not have coming into this. She was on the cover of magazines. She was getting the Vogue treatment, basically. And now everybody knows she's been called a liar by the judge who's trying the case. Anna Cross may or may not return to this case, the other chief prosecutor that they brought in. The whole district attorney's office has been disgraced. We saw their terrible performance in front of the nation at that hearing. And so I just can't help but think they're a lot better off on what, yes, looked like a bit of a long shot from the beginning than they were a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. I have mixed feelings about this. From a legal perspective, I think it's very bad what happened here because there was so much misconduct in this case, and Judge McAfee is putting his political career above the administration of justice in Fulton County, and that's not good for the system. It's also bad that this case should have been dismissed. This prosecutor should have been disqualified at a minimum, and a new prosecutor should have been brought in. And I doubt a new prosecutor would have refiled these charges because, again, it's not a crime to object to a presidential election. It's allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. That's why Democrats aren't in prison for objecting to Republican wins in 1968, 2000, 2004, and 2016. But I would say to the Democrats with their lawfare, do you really want this beat up old car racing to the finish line now that Fani Willis has completely destroyed her reputation, the reputation of her office, and the credibility of this case? It's just not a good look for Fani Willis and these Democrats. And it's like Dave said, this case is not going to get to trial before the election. So their whole goal of election interference is not going to happen. And they've really, this is going to backfire politically.
And they've got their own questions on that same front. I mentioned it earlier. MSNBC's Andrew Weissman, who's a former federal prosecutor, for the good of this case, given that ethical issues will now abound as to Willis, she should voluntarily recuse herself from the case and allow another prosecutor to oversee the Georgia Trump case. Another MSNBCer, Joyce Aline, the judge's ruling means Willis's entire office is not recused from the case, but the better path forward would be to let another prosecutor in that office take over. We still don't have a decision from her, though. I'd be shocked if Fani Willis actually stepped away. I think she's about to pull the rug out from under Nathan Wade because a man is not a plan. Mike goes away. We love you, Mike. Phil and Dave remain, and there's much more to go through, so don't go away. We'll be right back.